A man had been a pillar of the parish. In fact, like this man, this older man was looked upon like, you know, he had money, he donated so much, he was so generous, and he was generous to all the parishioners. And so he was like a pillar of the parish. And come find out, he had been there was a really, really brave girl that came forward and said that he was abusing her. And then there was another girl, really, really brave girl, that came forward. And they were super brave, because what happened after that threw me for a loop. Like I didn't even know how to handle the situation. But what ended up happening is, so this guy, you know, who had donated a lot to the parish or whatever, is found out in the court of law to have abused these girls. There was evidence. He was convicted. He was sent to jail. But all through the process, like from the beginning, when the girls first came out, these young girls were attacked, like horrifically attacked by the parishioners in the parish. By most of them. Wow. There was a handful that did not blame the girls and that were, you know, horrified. Yeah. And my husband and I were like one of that handful. Wow. And we lost friends over it. It basically, it really did like come and like sort of split the parish, even at that time, because we're just sitting here going, wait a second, like, how are all these, like, what, you're blaming these young girls?
Yeah, they don't have anything to gain from this. Everybody hates them now. It's like, right. Okay.
Well, nothing to gain, but also they were young girls when it was happening. They come out, and so what my husband and I did, the very first thing that we did when we found this out, right? Because everybody's first question, the first like sort of natural question, if you don't know anything about sexual abuse, is like, well, what the heck? Why didn't the girls come? Why didn't they tell their parents the first time that it happened? Why this? Why this? And it's always questioning the victim. It's never like, it's bizarre, because it's like we're dealing with a 60-plus-year-old man here, and somehow it's these little girls' fault. I'll never understand that. But because that was the reaction, we started, my husband and I just started educating ourselves. We read book after book after book. We would search things on the internet, and you know, and then that's when we found out, like, there's this thing called grooming, and these predators groom their victims sometimes years before they'll even ever physically touch them. Wow. And it's this whole like brainwash and mind control, and this, you know, like they're dealing with innocent children, and so the children like them, right? They trust them, and they're kind of like another parent to them, so of course they trust them.
Yeah.
And then they do this thing that doesn't, like, it makes the child feel uncertain, and it makes them feel gross and shameful. Yeah. But this is a person who love and they trust, and why would a person like that hurt them, you know? And so it just started to make sense to us. But what we could not stand was the fact that all of these parishioners were just like destroying these girls. They were just awful. Like, there were letters that were written to the judge in the situation, defending the predator and saying, these girls are a bunch of hussies, they blah blah, you know, just accusing them of all kinds of atrocities. You know, and the thing is like, some of these parishioners didn't know that those letters would be made public. It was kind of an accident that they were. It was supposed to be red tape put on them by the predator's lawyer, and that didn't happen. And so then those became public, and so it was just this huge mess. Wow. And then in the meantime, the way that the SSPX was dealing with it, because this particular situation was happening on their property. These girls were being abused. They were being taken out of classes to meet this guy. They were being abused. And so the society's response to that was ridiculous. Like, it was just absolutely insane. And the priest at the time at first was like, well, you know, no, we need to have the victim's parents and this guy come in so we can work this out. Let's try. Like, this was before like even the police were called, you know, and it was like, try to work this out. And, you know, and so finding out about that was like, what? what do you mean? Let's work this out, you know?
It's kind of late for that.
Yeah, yeah. And I was like, how often is this happening in the society? Like, and so then my husband and I, so then there were like letters sent to Bishop Fillet about it at the time, and his answer was less than, you know, desirable. And we weren't getting answers. Like the behavior of the SSPX in regard to this, the behavior of the parishioners, and the parishioners were not being told to, like, how, you know, well, I shouldn't say that. One sermon, I do remember the priest saying, you can't blame the girls, you know, but it didn't really stop. It didn't really stop them.
Gosh.
And so anyway, so he went to jail. Okay, so that was a huge fiasco. We, like I said, lost friends over it because there were people that were like in our face, like, how dare you? You know, we were one of the only ones that sat in on the, you know, the court hearing, and supported those girls, and they just attacked us. So after they found out that we were supporting the girls, then they attacked us, and it was like, this is just weird. You know, this is just strange.
Yeah. Like, why even get involved? I mean, isn't that something you kind of want to stay away from? And even just to preserve your parish unity, like, let's just keep our heads above water. And
well, it was interesting because that's what they were telling us. They were saying it was none of our business and we shouldn't be involved. And it was like our involvement literally was, we support the girls. How dare you people support this predator?
yeah.
And so
they were taking sides, and then they were just acting like you were the only one doing it. Very interesting.
Right. Well, and at the time too, it was interesting because, right, I want to say, yeah, it may have even been after. I want to say it was after he was exposed, and our eldest son had just died. He died at 8 months old. And there was a cemetery just being built on this church property. And this couple, this with money, the predator and his wife, offered to pay for a huge statue of an angel to put in the cemetery for him. And I just thought, yeah, you're not going to buy us. You're not going to buy us. I mean, maybe you bought the people in this parish, but that's so that was really weird.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that was kind of the beginning, really, of the end to our goodbye to the SSPX, because we were totally scandalized. We were horrified at the behavior, scandalized at the reaction. I'm like, this isn't Catholic. You know, this is not how people should behave in these situations. And so, I mean, fast forward, because then he spent a couple, I don't know, not long enough in jail. He should still be in jail. Because there were also some of his victims, you know, the statute of limitation, they did come forward, but the statute of limitations was up. And so they were not considered when in that case. So he abused a lot more girls than he was able to be convicted for at that time.
Okay.
And so so anyway, you know, fast forward, I don't know, probably 10 years, really, almost 10 years. And, you know, we had, there was a new priest at the time. And as soon as he came in, like, we knew at that time, me having worked in their schools, like, there's no communication between these people. And we were going to make sure that our new parish priest knew this story, knew the situation, and would deal with it properly, because we knew he was getting out of jail. And we also heard that the family kept saying, well, we're coming back. You know, they were so mad that any of us would dare to be like, you're not welcome here. And, you know, it's like one thing. Yeah, please do. Please go back to the church, go to confession, receive the Eucharist. But there better be stipulations on this guy. And you don't get to come back to this parish, because this is where your victims' families and your victims still go to church. You know, you don't get to come. You don't you don't get the privilege of coming back. So anyway, so I don't know. Tell me if I'm going down a rabbit hole. I don't want to give too much like detail on a situation you don't want to hear about. But anyway, so that was just kind of what really started opening our eyes, I guess.
Right. Well, because when he got out of jail, he did come back, right? And they
so exactly. So what happened was, for a couple of years he didn't. And then we kept hearing like these rumblings, like, oh, he's going to come back, and we're like, no. The parish priest, like, he knows the whole story. Matt had very thoroughly spent hours talking to him about all the details of what went down and what happened. And our parish priest had promised, he's like, well, that he's not coming back under my watch, essentially was what he had said. And so one day we go walking into church, and he's sitting there, and he's surrounded by families, by little girls sitting all around him, no restrictions, because also I actually started looking into what like the diocesan churches, like what their restrictions were for convicted pedophiles, essentially. And they were very strict. Like, they had to have a chaperone with them at all times on the property. If they were going to be going to a certain parish, everybody had to be warned. All the families were warned that he was a predator. There was this whole list of what the diocesan parish required.
Yeah.
And none of that was done, Laura. Literally, he was just there. Yeah. And nobody was warned. And by that time, 10 years later, like, there were new families, a lot of new families that didn't know anything about this story. And wow. So we just couldn't believe it. We were just floored. And so my husband ended up reaching out to the pastor at the time and said, what the heck is going on? This is totally unacceptable. And basically the priest said, it's none of your business. Like, I'm under holy obedience to my superiors, and my superior, who was Father Wegner at the time, was the district superior, has told me that this is what's happening, right? Well, and at first, before he even said that he was under holy obedience to a superior, he actually said, it's none of your business. Whatever I decide is what you're going to follow, essentially. And in a couple of years, they had been having these like more and more frequent sermons on like obedience to them. They are our authority, and we are to obey them. And we would kind of like be like, why are they hitting on this so hard? Like, what is what is the deal here? Right. And it just seemed to be happening more and more frequently. And a couple of years later, I just thought about the irony that, these guys demand absolute obedience. These guys from this group who were founded on disobedience,
Oh, yeah, right. Someone just said in the chat, how ironic.
Yeah, truly. Yeah. And so exactly. And so what ended up happening then was, when that didn't work with us, because my husband and I, we just riled up the whole parish. Like, at that point, there were quite a few people who felt guilty for doing what they had done. And they kind of, had a change of heart or whatever. And I just got on the phone and I was just saying, are you okay with this? Are you okay with this? This is not okay. And we rounded up like 60 people that we were going to have a meeting with, and we're going to be like, this is unacceptable, And so what ended up happening, the pastor found out that we were having this meeting. So then it changed. It was like, no, I'm under holy obedience. I'm listening to my superior. And so back off, this is none of your business. And so then he found out that we were going to have a meeting, because we were going to have a meeting with him. He had agreed to a meeting. And so then he found out that we were having a meeting with 60 parishioners. And he told us, he texted Matt, and he's like, Am I understanding correctly that you're having a meeting at your house tonight with parishioners? And he goes, and if you are, our meeting is off. And so that's fine. I don't need a meeting with you then. Goodbye, And so we did end up having a meeting. So we basically raised enough hell to have the district superior come out 2 weeks later, but it was 2 weeks later, so it was still kind of like, they were like, oh, we don't need to listen to you peons, you're just a bunch of lowly parishioners. And so he ended up coming out, and the whole thing, it was like we were living in the Twilight Zone. He had like set up tables in this like circular thing, and he stood in the middle, and he was telling us how, you know, he was just totally gaslighting us the entire time. And he was saying, at first it was like, you know, we need to forgive, like you are not charitable at all. And also he was upset because several of us had sent letters to Bishop Fillet, and we were like, we demand an answer, essentially.
Yeah.
And so the first thing he said is, he goes, how dare you? He was a German priest. How dare you contact Menzingen? And we're just like, you don't scare us.
No.
And so anyway, then he was gaslighting us the entire time. And I just see like the parishioners going, like starting to feel guilty, because he's like, and if anybody is to blame, it is you for not seeing that this man was abusing people. Okay, so he's saying this.
What?
He's trying to get us to be okay with him coming back. And the whole thing was just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I'm looking around at my fellow parishioners, and some of them are hanging their heads like in shame, like, oh yeah, I mean, I did see some things, and they were even admitting that to him, like there were some red flags, but I mean, I didn't know that's why, and I was trying to give him the benefit of charity, and you're just sitting here going, what are you doing? And I come out of that meeting and I'm like, that entire thing was a fiasco. So he ended up telling us, he goes, well, you know, because you guys have thrown a childish fit, you know, he won't be coming back for now, but there is no promise that he will not come back. And so anyway, that was not an okay answer for my husband and I. No. And so we decided that we were done with it. Like at that time, we were so upset and we were so scandalized at the behavior of the SSPX, and the fact that there was just no sympathy for the victims, just none. No compassion, no empathy, no care for their souls, no care for their families.